Hi, welcome to Foreigner in the Philippines. It's a late night meandering, I guess you would call it. I was talking to Beth, my wife, earlier about how all of my teachers were tough on me. I've learned a lot from a lot of people just simply by listening, so being a good listener is always a huge step forward. Step ahead of the game in learning, because if you listen a lot, then you find out a lot. I think it was the Dalai Lama that said, any time that you're talking, you're not listening. Any time that you're talking, you're not learning. Any time that you're listening, you're hearing something new or something that's going to change the way that you think. So therefore there's a lesson learned. I know that when I was taught in my music studies to be an instrumentalist, a trombone player, I remember that I tried to tell my teacher what I should be learning. Well, if you teach me to play this, sir, I'm going to be a good player. And he was quite brutal. He said, if you remove your instrument from the case and you do not play what I tell you, you are wasting your time. Now, I suppose we could doubt whether he knew what he was talking about, because he was only the principal trombone of the BBC Symphony Orchestra at the time and had perfect pitch and was one heck of a musician. I learned in that moment, which was humbling to say the least, that I should be listening instead of talking. Now, what it tells me is that those little compliments that you get from people that just love you and don't want to see that little frown come on your face when you're little, that is, and then when you get grown up, they don't want to offend you because they love you, and they will tell you that everything that you do is just wonderful because they love you. Now, I remember that I made something when I was working in my own art studio in LA, and I worked for a company that used to rent movie props, and I made a movie prop, a console, which actually you can see in some movies, and certainly you can see one of my consoles on their website, which is let me see, Modern Props. So you can go to modernprops.com and you'll see one or two of my consoles. Now, when I made the first console and I made the prototype and I went along, the man who owned the place, and it was the prestigious prop rental company in LA, which, let's face it, is where a lot of movies are made, and he looked at it and he said, it's not square. It had to have two picture frame apertures, which would have a television screen put into them. And this man had a very good eye, and he said it's not square. And his two best guys that he trusted said, it will be great. It's just a prototype. He said, no, it's not square. And in as proof that he was right, he said, get me a set square. And he sent for a set square, which of course was brought up post haste. And sure enough, when he offered it up into that picture frame, it was not square. It was 1/8 of an inch out. Now, we're really looking at something that is like this. The man had a demon eye and could see it. Now, he was very critical of the fact that I hadn't done that, but he allowed himself to to be persuaded to let me do the project, which was, in the end, was about 10 of these consoles which I made for them. And when I went up, I wasn't particularly thrilled to be seeing this man again, but I'd made up my mind that I would try my best to please this man. It's what Carlos Castaneda, in one of his books called A Petty Tyrant, and he says that a petty tyrant is something that you should welcome because it will force you to do greater than you perhaps would have done in your relaxed state. Well, I met the boss again, and he saw the first 6, I think, of these consoles that I'd made, and he said, well, I thought that you couldn't do it, but he said I couldn't be pleased. Now, my point is that all of those people who love us and who are there just to make sure that we don't feel unhappy, that we're not disappointed, that no one's going to criticize us or do anything to make us unhappy, they're not doing us any favors. My trombone professor and my singing coach, when I went there and I hadn't done my work, said, you are wasting my time and you won't be coming here for much longer if you continue to waste my time. He wasn't interested in the money, he was interested in doing a good job, and he was interested in turning out a good singer. And in the case of my trombone player, a good musician. My trombone professor was harder on me than anybody that I ever talked to that was also taking trombone lessons from him at the College of Music that I was at. So it's important to recognize that the accolades that you may get from your loved ones are not of the same value as the most ruthless critic who is there to make sure that you improve. Now, having said that, this is not the same as someone who is brutally honest and enjoys the brutality more than the honesty. I'm talking about someone who actually wants to see you benefit, who wants to see you improve. So, a definition of a lesson. A definition of a lesson is you must have a teacher willing to teach and a student willing to learn. Unless you have those two things, there is no lesson is learned. So the next time somebody gives you a hard time in order to make you work harder, do better, you should thank him, because that's the one that will help you to gain ground in what is a highly competitive world. I remember that when I was acting in the role of driving instructor and the person didn't like me being tough on her, and she stopped the car in the road and she got out and left me in the passenger seat, and she said, "You're too hard." She then went and had professional lessons from someone who got paid every time that she showed up, and was wonderful. "Oh, you're doing wonderfully, my dear." Of course, he thought she was doing wonderfully, because every time she arrived, when she left, he was that little bit wealthier. After about 2 or 3 of these lessons, she realized that she was not making the gains that she hoped for, and she came back to me and said what she had learned. He didn't care as much as I realize now that you do, and I'm sorry. And she passed her test when she took it. So, go for the teacher that will be tough on you. Go for the teacher that will be forcing you to work even harder than perhaps you would like. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. It's all about learning, isn't it? Bye for now.